All right, good to see everybody this evening. We may have a few more jump on here, but great to see everybody. And welcome to another edition of the Mountain Zoom. And we are glad to have you all this evening. And I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint presentation for tonight. And what we are covering tonight is actually amateur radio. Give me just a second. We're covering amateur radio tonight, and this is something that we've done before on the Mountain Zoom, but we decided to refresh it a little bit and to give it another go here. But we're glad to have you all here and to be part of this. And we'll, if you have questions at any time, you put it in the chat pod. It may be at the end before we cover some of those answers, but I'll be honest with you, I'm no expert. I'm hoping that my Elmer, as I call him, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and I'm hoping my Elmer will jump on here later, and he was hoping to, but the one thing about it, like I said, I'm no expert, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how to get started in amateur radio, and I think that's the main thing. So let's talk a little bit about the beginning and where the start of amateur radio began. I mean, there's a long history of amateur radio or ham radio, but we definitely want to discuss a little bit about how it got started. So basically in 1901, Marconi, basically he made a voice call across the Atlantic using a radio frequency. He used high power and large antennas. And so that became the beginning of what we now know as amateur radio. And then in 1912, there was a Radio Act of 1912 requiring amateur radio operators to be licensed. So just prior to World War I area, that time frame, it began to get a little bit bigger and more common, I guess you could say, as operators began to. At that point in time, they were building radios. It wasn't like you could go in a store or what have you and buy one, or at least buy one that easy. You were buying radios or building radios, or someone was building one for you and you were buying it from them. So those are two of the big things there. Now there's a lot of progression through history, even up to today with amateur radio, but that's how things got started. So what is it? What is ham radio? What is amateur radio? And basically, it's a licensed radio service that is used by the FCC, that's serviced by the FCC. The FCC actually license you. You have to be licensed to be able to talk on radio. Now you can own one of these radios all day, but you actually have to be licensed to use the radio. Then that doesn't mean you can receive on that radio or listen on one of those radios, but to be able to actually use the radio, you have to be licensed. It is a voluntary, non-commercial communication. Now, what I mean by that is the non-commercial is you cannot be paid. This is not a deal that you're paid to do this. A lot of times you'll see company vehicles running up and down the road, whether it be here in Eastern Kentucky, coal trucks or soft drink company or just company vehicles, and they have a commercial radios in them. And with those commercial radios, they are a paid license, so they're commercial, and so there is a paid license there that they have to have. So with amateur radio, it is a voluntary type deal, which is non-commercial communication. Some of the services, some of the big ones here is, I throw in emergency communications, and we'll cover a little bit about emergency communications here in a minute, but emergency communications, event communications, usage of radio training. Let me stop here just a minute and with emergency communication, we may cover this a little bit later, but in a little more detail, but it could be an issue. I know one of the islands in the Atlantic a few years ago was hit heavily by a hurricane, basically devastated, and the only communication off that island back to the U.S. mainland was actually amateur radio operators using a battery powered. They were able to use that. So those are three of the services, and there's more, but emergency communication, event communication, and the uses of radio training, basically training people how to use the radio. There's high schools that have this. Matter of fact, here at Harlan County High School, there is a amateur radio club. And so the instructor there, or the, I guess you could say the sponsor, one of the things he does is he teaches about radio and amateur radio. Then we have the hobby side of things. We have the radio activities, and we have communication exchange. Radio activities, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It could be something like contests. Communication exchange is just basically sitting around talking on radio, as they say, just talking back and forth, whether it individually or through a net. We'll discuss that in a little bit. So why does it exist? It exists as a form of communication, definitely communication to be able to talk to others. You know, there's one thing about it, it must be proper communication. There is, you know, foul language, anything like that is not allowed. So you're demeaning of people or what have you. And also because it's not commercial, you cannot necessarily get on there and have ads and you know, ads for companies or what have you, because it's non-commercial. So it's a basic communication. It's volunteerism. It could be a volunteer at an event and that sort of thing. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. It also exists for global goodwill. Now, global goodwill is we have the ability with amateur radio to basically talk around the world, talk across the globe, that I can sit here right here in my house and have the ability to talk to somebody across the globe. So experiments, there's a lot of experiments out there, experimenting with radios, experimenting with antennas, basically how that radio performs, how that antenna performs. There's some experiments as far as satellites, and we'll talk about satellites in a little bit as well. Training. Another thing, you know, the big thing is training people how to use this, how to use amateur radio in all different aspects. And there's multiple things that you can use the training for. So what's all the interest about? It's fun. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover the fun stuff. And there's several things out there that just plain fun. So another thing, it can be, you can participate this indoors and outdoors. I've done that here. I'm sitting here with a mobile unit that is basically a base unit that it's in the house, but I've also got a couple of HTs that I can actually take those outside, or the mobile can go in a vehicle. So basically it's something you can participate in indoors or outdoors. So weather don't hurt you a lot there. Also, there is no age limit. We'll talk about the test in a minute, but if you can pass that test at any age, you know, it doesn't matter if you're 9 or 90, as they say, there's no age limit. Basically, it is easy to participate. You take that test, you study for the test, you take the test, you pass the test, you get licensed, and you buy a radio. And so that's the cool part. It is one of the neatest hobbies out there that you can participate in. Also, you'll learn something, you teach something, to share something. One of the things is with amateur radio that I found out, and what little time I've been part of it, is it's one of those hobbies that you're constantly learning something. And as you learn something, you'll get to teach somebody something, and you'll share that with others. And it's one of those things you're constantly learning. Anytime that you do any research on it, you'll find something that you'll like, and you'll dig deeper into it, and you'll continue learning. And then all of a sudden somebody will ask a question. It's yeah, I know what you're talking about there. Let me here's what I found out about it. So basically you shared it with somebody and you've taught them. Meet new people. If you are a people person, it may be this may be the ability that you're meeting new people across the globe, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so that's just another one of the interests about it, is meeting new people, and you're learning a new skill. I didn't grow up around amateur radio, didn't have a lot of knowledge about it, and it's one of those things that is a skill that I've learned and continue to enjoy practicing nearly every day. It's one of those things that it's basically enjoyable. So then the entry level, like I mentioned, that entry level is easy, and it's also fairly inexpensive. You can buy a radio. We'll talk about that in a minute. You can buy a radio basically for $35. You can buy a radio. That radio there gets you on the air for $35. So you can't beat that. So who's the typical amateur radio operator? You may wonder. Well, matter of fact, it's you. You can be the typical amateur radio operator, and you fit in that category. Me, I'm the typical amateur radio operator. Your neighbor, and you may have a neighbor that's actually a ham operator. You never know. A lot of times, if you go out there and look at the skyline, if you've never noticed before, and you may see vertical antennas or Yagi antennas popped up behind somebody's house, and you're like, now I know what they're doing. That's amateur radio. So your neighbor, believe it or not, the kid down the street, he or she may be that typical amateur radio operator. The person you just passed in the grocery store aisle, they could actually be carrying a radio with them. A lot of times you'll see amateur radio operators, they'll have one in their pocket or what have you, or in a pack with them, and those things are easy to carry. Those little HTs they're hand size, so they're definitely easy to carry. So basically, that's your typical amateur radio operator. Just about anybody that you would run into definitely has the ability to study for that test, pass that test, and become an amateur radio operator. So let's look a little bit about the license. That's the most important part. That's what gets you on the air. The licensing is done by the Federal Communication Commission. And there's actually 3 classes of amateur radio license. Now, the entry level is the technician, and you must pass a 35 question exam, and that grants the basic operation privileges. There's lots of local and some digital communication opportunities with the technician exam. With local, that's going to get you on the air, that's going to let you do some simplex, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You're going to be able to hit your local repeaters using UHF and VHF. So that's going to get you some privileges there, just basic privileges. And that 35 question exam, there is a pool, and we'll talk a little bit about the study portion of it in a minute, but there's a pool of 400 some odd questions that you must go out there and learn, and to be able to get to pass that 35 question exam. The general, you have to have acquired that technician license and pass that and you have to pass another 35 question general exam. Now with the general, you're going to get more privileges. You're going to get some more frequency uses. You're going to be able to talk around the globe using HF, which is a high frequency. So now you have the ability to talk on majority of the HF frequencies, as well as the VHF and UHF frequencies. So that's going to give you a little bit more. Then there is the Amateur Extra. That is the top license that's available. And you must have acquired the general license and pass a 50-question Amateur Extra exam. And then it grants the privileges on all frequencies and modes. So with those 3 classes, that there's what you have. Now with when you go in and you take a technician class, the volunteer examiner will ask you, when you finish it and you pass it, they will ask you, do you want to take the general? And I've known of people to do that, that they've studied and they've covered the information enough to be able to take the general. And a lot of times you pass it, but because there's some things in that general that reverts back to the technician. So so that's one of the opportunities that they give you is when you take that technician, and as soon as you pass it, they will ask you, are you interested in taking the general? So basically there is your all 3 radio license classes. The technician, which is your entry level. Next up is your the technician is your entry level. General's the next up, and you have to pass the technician to get there, to be able to take that. You get more privileges, more frequency uses, and talking around the globe on high frequency HF. The Amateur Extra, you must have passed the prior 2 classes of license to be able to be able to take that test. Now, one of the things that was removed several years ago was Morse code. Used to, at one point in time, I can't remember the year right off the top of my head, that they removed Morse code from the testing to be able to get your license in a technician. You had to know Morse code, or what's referred to as CW. So that has been removed. So that's no longer on the test. Also, there is currently no charge for the license from the FCC. So basically, that license is free. So basically, what you've done is, if everything is free at this point in time, that license is free as well as a non-commercial license. And then the license is also good for 10 years from the time of your original testing. For instance, if you took your technician today, it would expire on February the 10th of 2032. But if you went and got your general and your Amateur Extra, it would still expire on February the 10th of 2032. So whatever your original testing date was, that's how good the license is for. So once you get that, you've got 10 years before you have to worry about renewing that license. So let's get started. Getting started here, we've got the license down pat. We've got the information on that, and so let's get started. As soon as you log off this this Zoom tonight, I'll say begin studying for the technician exam. If you're serious about it, we'll talk a little bit about where to find some stuff, but I would begin studying soon. Also, there are multiple avenues to study. There are books out there. Now, we're talking about the technician only because that is the entry level. So from here on out, we'll basically be talking about your technician only. There's multiple avenues out there. You've got books. They need to have the current test question pool. And I can't stress that enough. There are books out there that you can find that are cheap, they're free, but they may be old. So it should read a technician. The book should read Technician 2018 through 2022. Test questions will change on July 1 of 2022. So what you'll do is, if you're looking at getting it soon, You'll want to get that 2018 through 2022 technician book, and you'll want to start studying for that. But you'll want to take that test prior to July 1 of this year, because that question pool is going to change on July 1. Also, there are several online videos that teach the technician 2018 through 2022 question pool, but just make sure you get that. So there's also web-based studying that covers that technician pool. So there's multiple avenues that you can go after there. Also, there's online practice test or test in the back of the book. You can take practice tests multiple times prior to scheduling tests. And that's what I recommend doing, is take multiple. Before I took the test, I would say that I took a practice test, I don't know, I would venture to say 30 times at least. I took it multiple times the day that I took the test. And if you can get down to where you're only missing 2 or 3, you're ready to take that test. And you must answer correctly answer 26 questions. So getting started, getting ready to test. First, find that test location. Let me back up here on this here. Like I said, there's multiple avenues. If you'll do some web searches, you'll come up with that. I can't offer any specific items out there, books or what have you. There's multiple books out there. There's books that you can get for free. There's information that you can get for free. There's the web stuff. I mean, I don't know if you ever see that or not. There's one of the books. It's a really nice spiral bound book. It's really great. Got a lot of information in it. So there's multiple books out there. There's books that you can get via, if you have an online reader, one of the tablets or one of your smartphones that have that reader on there. There are some fairly inexpensive books on there, so you may want to look at that. There's some really good videos. You can go to that famous video site and even find some classes on there that are really, really good, that give some information. And so we're talking free stuff here. If you will do a web search for, that technician question pool and practice test, that's going to give you some ideas there, and we'll cover that in just a minute. So ready to test, you'll need to find a location, test location. You can do this in person or online and schedule it. Now, online is new. Online option began in early 2020, just shortly after the pandemic began. And as a matter of fact, that's how I did mine. I took it online, and there was a group out of Arkansas that did the testing. It was interesting. At the end of the session, the lead VE, he said, Cumberland, Kentucky, that's got a grade just east of there. And I said, yeah, Black Mountain, and crosses into Virginia. And he said, yeah, I've been across that. He said, my brother-in-law was a truck driver. And so it was interesting that this man from Arkansas that I'd never met before till that day, that he had been through Harlan County and crossed over into Wise County, Virginia. And he was my lead volunteer examiner for my test. So I've done the online, and I'll tell you a little bit in a minute about the online, or there's in person, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The National Association for Amateur Radio can be helpful in finding a test location. You can go onto their website, arrl.org, I believe it is. You can go on there, and they're going to be very helpful in finding the test location, also the study information as well. Now, first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to apply for an FCC registration number. It's called an FRN, and there's a website there. All you need to do is do a web search for FRN number. You need to get that number prior to taking that exam. So whether you and print that number out there'll be a form that comes up, print that number out, take that with you, because whether you're doing this online or you're doing it in person, that volunteer examiner is going to they'll want that number. They have to have that number to send that information in to get your license when you pass the test. So definitely needed to take the exam. So testing, who can give the test? Well, we have volunteer examiners, and these volunteer examiners are can be based at local clubs, and they usually schedule monthly sessions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the FCC granted online testing for online ham radio, online ham radio testing earlier in 2020. So that allows you to test at your convenience, almost. You're going to have to, there is a schedule that they'll list online. And so if you'll do a internet search for online ham radio testing, that's going to bring that information up for you. It's going to be right at the top of the page there. You'll be able to click on that and be able to look into that about testing at your almost convenience. So basically, it's one of those things of there is a good chance that you could, if you're interested in testing, if you start studying and you're interested in testing next Monday afternoon, there is a good chance that you'll be able to take a test online next Monday afternoon. Your local clubs, they'll usually schedule monthly sessions. They have there's several local clubs, and we'll talk about local clubs in a minute. There's local clubs that they have monthly sessions, and so we can get you in touch with those folks as well. But we'll talk about those local clubs in a minute. The cost on those usually are $10 to $20. So I know our local club does it for 10. I know some of the online testing is actually $14 or $15. I know I paid 14. I know others paid 15. So it just depends on which group is actually testing, doing the testing. So $10 to $20. So say, here we're into this thing. We've gotten our study material free. We have taken a test. It's $10 to $20, say $10. We're $10 into this thing. I mean, how many hobbies can you get into for $10? So, and a beneficial hobby, and we'll talk about the benefits of it in a little bit. But so that's I'm giving you a running total as we go here. After passing, you're going to receive you'll receive your call sign in a short amount of time. Now, mine, it took me to receive my call sign. I think it was around 6 hours. That's all I was. It didn't take long. It was either 3 or 6 hours. I've heard of people receiving it within a few minutes. A lot of it just depends on the online examiner or the local club and how quick they can get things, the paperwork taken care of, submitted. So the longest that I've heard recently here in our area has been about a day or two that you'll receive your call sign. So, and you cannot transmit until that FCC posts the call sign on their website. So, that website is located at the same place that you're going to get your FRN, the information there. So basically what I ended up getting is I got an email from the FCC saying that my call sign had been posted, and it also it gave me a link to go and print my license off. So it's a pretty cool deal. So ELMERS, and I noticed that my Elmer, who I referred to as my Elmer, just checked in a minute ago. So ELMERS, these are people who are that you've reached out to or should reach out to when going down this path of amateur radio. These folks here are extremely beneficial in what they do, and they're willing to share a lot. So they're amateur radio operators is what they are. And one of the things is I found out with these ELMERS, they could be somebody that's only had a license a couple of years to somebody who's had a license for 50 years. But one of the things is they're always willing to share. As a matter of fact, I was listening to a net out of Tennessee. It's been a few weeks ago, and there was a lady that she called into the net, and she was needing some help on an item and of an antenna. And they spent probably 10 minutes talking back and forth, and they literally had 3 people ready to go to her house to help her with the issue that she had. So that's one of the cool things about this hobby is there are people out there willing to help. And so they are actually called ELMERS. You have local amateur radio clubs. Here are some of the ones in our region. And these folks are available for information. They're available for testing, so on and so forth. For instance, the Harlan County Amateur Radio Club, they meet the first Sunday of every month at 2 o'clock at the Harlan Library, and they give testing each month. They like to know who, they like to know ahead of time, if they have somebody that's coming to do a test, take a test, so they'll have the necessary information ready. There's also the Kentucky Mountains Amateur Radio Club in Perry County. These folks are very active. The Harlan County group, the Perry County group, they're very active. I participate in Skywarn Nets every Sunday evening with these folks. They're very active, and we can get you hooked up with them there. We've got folks that we can get you hooked up with both places. The Letcher County Amateur Radio Club, they're extremely active too. I'm not sure their meeting date, but I do know that Roland Brown, I think he's the president over there at this point in time. I know they just did a really cool amateur radio deal just this week at Martha Jane Potter Elementary there in Letcher County, where they took a radio inside a classroom or two, put up an antenna outside, and did some communication stuff with some other ham operators. And so it allowed these kids in this class, and I don't remember what class it was or anything like that. They put it on their social media page. So really cool stuff. There's also one, Phil, I didn't see one in Wise County, but I did see the Mountain Empire Amateur Radio Society. They're located in Abingdon, and you can find them on Facebook. The folks out of Perry County, Letcher County, and their Mountain Empire in Abingdon have Facebook pages that you can take care of that. Also there, for you, Billy, there is a Johnson County Amateur Radio Club, and I presume they're still active. And I didn't find a lot of information on them, but that's something we could probably find out for you. Definitely find some folks that are in Johnson County, Tennessee, on that. I do know that I found out, I guess it was this week or last week, that there was the Western Carolina Amateur Radio Society. They actually are getting ready to have a class, a technician class via Zoom. That's the Western Carolina Amateur Radio Society. They have a Facebook page, and I think their class actually starts. It may have actually already started. I can't remember if it's this week or last week, but that may be something to look into. Billy says that the Johnson County, Tennessee Amateur Radio Club is active. So these are just some local clubs out there, and in some of the areas that we definitely touch here. So it's one of those things. We'll find some information for you if you're interested in it. We'll find some more things. But there's some ELMERS. Like I said, the people down the street. If you see somebody that has these antennas out behind their house, there's a good chance in these mountains they're not television antennas. So check with these folks. Go knock on their door. As a matter of fact, there are some folks that over the years that they have passed away within recent years, and I wish they were still around. There's some things that I would like to have talked to them about now that I'm an amateur radio operator. And so I think that would have been a really cool benefit, because I do remember them being amateur radio operators over the years. As a matter of fact, there's a friend of mine, and she's been doing this for several years. And she told me that she has actual confirmation from over 200 countries using CW or Morse code. That's all she uses is Morse code. And so these are people to get in touch with. These are people that are, and they're willing to share. They want to share. This is something that they want to pass on. So they're called ELMERS. All right. We talked about activities amateur radio. This is just some of the activities that are available through amateur radio. Hey, talking on the radio. It could just be basically talking on the radio, anything from the weather to the new antenna that you bought to just basic small talk, back and forth, last night's ball game, what have you. So basically just talking on the radio. Emergency and disaster communications. I see our Harlan County Emergency Management Director checked in here. And one of the things that he and I have talked about a lot is using amateur radio as part of emergency and disaster communications. I mentioned that island in the Atlantic that got hit by that hurricanes a few years ago. That was the only form of communication. One of the things is internet goes out, television goes out, but you may still have the ability with a simple HT or mobile or base unit radio, depending on what you have. So that's one of the activities of amateur radio, emergency and disaster communication. Educational events and programs. Like I mentioned, that event that the folks in Letcher County did with the at Martha Jane Potter earlier this week. That was a really cool educational event. I do know at one point in time, I'm not sure if they still have it. I do know Scouts, they used to have badges, amateur radio badges. And so they would have events and some field days and stuff. And a lot of times the amateur radio clubs would go and set up and allow the Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts to talk on the radio, or at least have the ability to communicate. Event communications. This picture here is a bicycle rider on top of Black Mountain. And at that point in time on Black Mountain, when that picture was taken, there was virtually very little telephone communication up there. And so we were able to use, for this event, we were able to use amateur radio operators to, we're able to use amateur radio operators to scattered about Harlan County. It was a route that was 35 miles long from the top of Black Mountain. If you've been through Harlan County, you know what I'm talking about, from the top of Black Mountain to Lowell. And so we staged people along the way, and we were able to use two different radio repeaters, and we'll talk about repeaters in a minute, two different radio repeaters to for event communication. And it allowed us to keep up with every cyclist on the route and where they were and the locations they pass. Skywarn, I mentioned Skywarn. That's basically weather communications, whether it be oncoming weather that we're expected to receive, or weather that has just happened. So Skywarn is a possibility. Also, learning about amateur radio is another activity. Just you're constantly learning about this stuff. And so I mentioned the sharing earlier. So that's another activity. Contests, there's several contests out there. There's all kinds, just multitudes of contests to be able to do. There's contests like fox hunting. There's a contest of during a time frame of how many contacts that you can make, how many amateur radio contacts that you make. The fox hunting is you're out here, there is a signal, or actually a radio that's emitting a signal, and you've got to triangulate and find where that is in a certain amount of time. So that's another contest as well. That's just a couple to name. There's also formal nets. There's nets. There's a net going on right now, I'm sure. There's multiple nets going on right now. And so that's where you have a net control, and this person is in charge, and you check in on that net, and they may ask them some questions. They may just, it may be something that you have, one thing is they allow, if you have a radio for sale, that's perfectly legal. You can say, hey, I've got a radio for sale. I want $200 for it, that sort of thing, give the type of radio. And so that may be allow you to talk about that. The formal nets of talking about different types of equipment, you name it. Other types of radio communications. I mentioned the Morse code, which is CW. There's APRS, automatic packet reporting system. And as a matter of fact, on Monday night, I guess it was, Bob Berninga, who I think I pronounced that right, Berninga, who was the inventor of APRS in 1992, I believe it was, 93, passed away Monday. And you want to talk about an inventor? I mean, this guy ranks up there with some of your top inventors out there. Amazing some of the stuff that he did. If you want to do a web search, that's a really cool web search to do. Slow scan TV, that's what this picture is. This is one of those outdoor type deals. I was at outside the Altama Plantation Wildlife Management Area in southern and southeast Georgia. I was actually doing some slow scan TV through the International Space Station. I'll talk about that in a minute. So you see I've got a tablet there, and I've also got an HT radio with an antenna there attached. Satellite communications is something that's a type of communication other than just the type of talking on the radio deal. There's digital communications as well. Allows you to talk around the globe. Basically, you could sit here at a computer and not even use a radio. That will allow you to talk around the globe. There's also ways that you can use the radio that you're using the computer to be able to talk across the globe. So what kind of radio or equipment do I need? That's the next thing. First of all, and one of the things my Elmer said is, what do you want? What do you want to accomplish? And so what is the best radio for my needs? And that may be something you need to sit down and think about. You may buy a radio, but then you want to expand on that. Well, what do you want that radio to do? What do you want to do with that radio? And that's one of the things that my Elmer kept telling me, hey, what is it you want to do, Jeremy? What do you want to do with this? And he's probably laughing right now, I'm sure. But because we talked in a great deal on that topic. What do you want to do? What's the best needs? So first thing, I would talk with an amateur radio operator. What are they doing? What is it they're doing here? So definitely talk with an amateur radio operator. What kind of cost do you want to put into it? Like I said, you can take $35. I don't know if you can see that or not. You take $35 and put it in an HT. You can go up to $80 and put it into an HT, or you can grab a mobile and a switching power there. Mobiles are DC power, and so it allows you to put them in a vehicle, and that's what you see there in that photo. But you can put it with a switching power that's switching AC power, your house power, to DC, and that combination there, it just depends on what you want. It could start at $150 with that combination, or right on up. So what kind of cost do you want to put into this hobby? That's something you need to look at as well. And one of the things is about it, you're going to continue adding to that. It just doesn't stop with one radio. You're going to continue to add to that. The types of radios, like I covered there, you got the handheld radios, like I've shown here. You've got the mobile radio, which is the top portion in that picture, the KK4 KCQ, which is our local repeater call sign, which is mobile. You have a base, which is basically those two pieces together. And then you have a portable radio, which could be, radio that you can take with you that can run off battery power, whether it's battery power in a vehicle that's kind of a mobile, or that can actually run off of a 12-volt battery out in the middle of nowhere. That literally, Shad, you could take something like this to High Rock, and you could communicate with probably people all over southeastern Kentucky, southwest Virginia, and it would be portable to be able to do that. So where do I purchase this stuff? First thing I'm going to say is amateur radio operators. There's somebody there that's going to help you out. It's going to be one of those ELMERS. It's going to be one of those people with that amateur radio club. Check with those folks. They're also going to help lead you down that path if you need to go to a radio equipment dealer. So there's online retailers. There are numerous. I'm not going to start naming them, but if you'll do a search for ham radio equipment, you're going to be able to find it. You're going to be able to find it through online retailers. You're going to be able to find it through online auction type places, bid sites, social media. They're out there. But if you'll do a search for ham radio equipment, you're going to find the whole front page full of stuff, and then you're going to keep finding stuff. So what I'd suggest is find what you're interested in and then start looking from there and finding the best price of what you want. And, this place here may have a good deal, but this place over here may have a better deal. This place over here maybe have maybe a little bit more, but it's got free shipping. So look and see what you've got out there. And there's a lot of places out there that offer some really nice equipment, whether it be used or new, at really good stuff. And that's one of the things I'll add is, don't overlook that used equipment. There's some really good used equipment out there. That mobile that I showed you there a minute ago, the picture of that mobile radio was a used radio, and it is an excellent radio. Also, there's amateur radio specialty stores as well that you can actually walk into. There are none nearby us, but there are places out there that you can actually walk into and talk to someone there about what your needs are, and they can get you hooked up. But like I said, if you'll go back to those folks that already are amateur radio operators, lean on them and lean on them hard. They're gonna be able to sit down and talk to you, and if they're like my Elmer was, they'll say, "Hey, what do you want? What do you want to do with this?" And that's what you need to look at. So getting on the air, let's talk Simplex first. And I know we're running a little short on time, but let's talk Simplex first. Simplex is basically using a single frequency to talk with someone. An example is 146.520, which is a 2-meter national frequency. Basically, that's where I have a radio and you have a radio, and we're just talking back and forth. And we'll probably be able to do this over a few miles. You're not going to be able to do this over a great period of mileage on UHF and VHF. Now you get into HF on that general category. We're talking about the technician right now, but when you get into HF, you're going to be able to use Simplex and go even further. So basically, it's a single frequency. Like I said, that 146.520. It's usually within a few miles, especially here in the mountains. Now you get up on top of these ridges here, on top of Pine Mountain, Black Mountain here in Eastern Kentucky, Southwest Virginia, you may be able to reach out a little bit further. Also, can be a further depending on, like I said, the location of that station. If you're on ridge tops and you're 5 or 6 miles away, and you're both using mobiles that are pushing 50 watts, you may be able to get out a little bit further on Simplex. If you're using 5-watt handhelds, it may be a little closer. So wattage has a lot to do with it as well. And like I said, it depends on the output of both of those radios. Equipment's simple. Simple equipment for Simplex as well. So equipment's simple. And it's also reliable. And we're talking about local, like I mentioned. Then we got repeaters. These are mostly UHF and VHF frequencies. In the mountains, VHF is a whole lot more reliable than UHF. a gentleman told me when I first got started, I would refer to him as an Elmer because he's helped a lot of people. This gentleman said, UHF frequencies just don't work well in these mountains. And every time I attempt to use a UHF frequency on one of my radios, I remember that and stop using it. So VHF tends to be a little bit more reliable. It's set to automatically relay radio signals. So that's what that radio repeater's for. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see the person on the left is sending a frequency into that repeater on top of that mountain, and it comes out into the other person's radio. So they allow for longer range for smaller radios. For instance, I can sit here at my house and I can talk to somebody using a repeater. Like I said, I'm at a high elevation. There's a repeater at a high elevation. I can talk to somebody in Knoxville, Tennessee using a repeater. I've consistently talked to people, as a crow flies 20 miles away using repeaters. So 20, 30 miles away using repeaters. So that's the beauty of repeaters. They're located on high points, ridges, buildings, that sort of thing. So in here in the mountains, we typically see them on ridges. You get into cities, Lexington, Kentucky. If you're familiar with it, the financial center there in downtown Lexington, there are a couple of repeaters on top of that building. A lot of your large cities will have repeaters on buildings. And you can also use that simple equipment to use those, to hit those, to get into those repeaters as well. And they're also reliable and local. And I said, well, maybe up to 90 miles. I have actually got into a repeater on numerous occasions, 90 miles from my house in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Whereas I'm sitting here in Harlan County, Kentucky. And there's lots of opportunities for repeaters. So local repeaters, I wanted to put this up here. This is a UHF type deal. So on the left, you've got the little guy there holding that person is holding a radio and they're talking. And the red line at the top, they are transmitting on 442, 725. It's going to a repeater. And basically, it's coming out at 447.725. There's an offset. There's a 5 megahertz offset on 70 centimeter band, which is UHF. And so I'm the person holding the radio. You're the person in the SUV on the right. So I'm talking to you through that repeater. I'm talking to you on 442, 725 megahertz, and you're actually receiving it on 447, 725 megahertz. Now you talk back to me and you're talking on 442, 725 megahertz, and I'm receiving it on that 447, 725 megahertz. So there is a 5 megahertz offset there for repeater, transmit, and receive. So you're transmitting on 447, 725, and you're receiving on 442, 725. So that's what local repeaters do, or repeaters do. Talking around the world, and I'm not going to cover a lot on this, you're dealing with HF bands. Most of the privileges need that general or amateur extra license. Equipment can be complex and a little bit more expensive. We're talking about a $35 or an $80 ham radio here, or a couple $100 or HT radio, or a couple $100 mobile radio set up as a base. You get into HF bands and you're getting into the hundreds, the upper, $800, $900 up into the thousands of dollars, that sort of thing. But your coverage is going to be worldwide. You're going to be able to talk a little bit worldwide using radio frequency. That's not digital, but using radio frequency. Now there's digital opportunities, and you're dealing with very little radio frequency or non-radio frequency. So what I mean is little radio frequency is on top of Black Mountain, there is a repeater up there that is tied into multiple repeaters across the globe. And I stood out here in my front yard one night with this handheld radio that puts out 5 watts, and I talked to a gentleman in Ireland. And so we communicated back and forth. And so that's using very little radio frequency. I can also go into that one of those repeaters that is tied to that repeater on Black Mountain, and I can actually use a digital mode or almost digital mode, basically through the internet, and be able to talk to somebody around the globe. So there's some digital opportunities through UHF and VHF modes. Then you have satellites as well. So let's talk about the International Space Station. Here's where some of the fun stuff begins, and I'm gonna cover a couple things here real quick. International Space Station, it's just a big satellite. We talked about satellites earlier, so it's just a big satellite. International Space Station has been in the news recently that they are going to, at least the US portion of it, looks like they're going to take it out of service in 10 years, which I think at that time it will be 30-year-old, I think. I may be wrong on that number, but I'm thinking it's about 20-year-old now. This year, I think it's 20-year-old this year or last year one. So another opportunity is slow scan TV through the International Space Station. There's automatic packet reporting system that I talked about that. And the APRS is basically, you can receive weather reports, you can send your direction. You can send your actual where you're located at and short messages. You can actually send emails or text messages through APRS. I could use APRS and send a text message to or an email to you using that. So there's voice that you can use voice. It acts as a repeater, or you can actually even talk to them on the space station at certain times. It's also used as that crossband repeater. It's used as a repeater, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. So here is, I was hoping to put a video together to show you all International Space Station 2 or 3 times a year. They through the Russian portion of the space station, they put out what's called slow scan TV, and it sends out a signal. And for lack of better words, it's almost like a fax. You have a radio, or actually you have a handheld police scanner, and you have this and a device that has a smartphone or a tablet that has a decoder in there, and you can actually decode that tone, and it will give you this picture. Now, if you'll notice, there's some grainy appearances in there. It's because that space station is 260 miles up, flying 17,000 miles an hour, and I don't have a good enough antenna to be able to pick that up very clear. So it's impressive to be able to do that. So, but that's something that you can actually do with a handheld scanner and a decoder, or like I said, it's HT or mobile radio or a base station, whatever, using the right frequency. Another thing is here is, and I'm going to play this here. This is some information. This is a communication that I made a couple of weeks ago using the crossband repeater on the International Space Station as it passed over my house. My house, if you'll notice in the picture on the right-hand side of the globe, my house will be in the center, and it passed over to basically to my northeast. And so I was able to talk to a gentleman in Atlanta who recorded this and actually emailed this to me. So I'm going to play this right quick. This is actually he and I talking and some others talking and using the International Space Station as a repeater.
CQL, Jeremy in Cumberland, Kentucky. Station here at KI4ASK, EM73, Joe in Atlanta for the Cumberland, Kentucky station. Zero, Oscar 4, Victor, Oscar, Quebec, Phoenix, in Cleveland, Tennessee. Whiskey 9, Lima, November, Echo Mike 73. Lima, November, KI4ASK, 3, Joe in Atlanta. Okay, Roger, 73. 89, OIN, EM51.
So there you go. You have there was, I think, five people there, 4 or 5 people including KI4 ASK there in Fayetteville, Georgia. And so we were able to communicate with each other. You heard the one station there from Cleveland, Tennessee, me and Cumberland, he in Atlanta, Joe there in Atlanta. We were able to communicate each other with a repeater, crossband repeater that is on the International Space Station. So that was pretty neat as well. So now, begin studying. We're going to wrap this thing up. Start studying now. Take that test. Acquire a radio before you take the test or after you take the test, but begin the study and take the test, acquire a radio, and get on the air. Hopefully I'll hear you out there somewhere along the way. So, you know, a lot of people out there I've got to thank. A lot of them are on here. Some are on here tonight, but those people out there, KK4, KCQ, 147, 105, they're out of Harlan, KY4, MT out of Hazard, 146.670. A lot of information here that I got was from the National Association for Amateur Radio. These individual stations, my Elmer there, KN4 UCZ, KO4 TVG, I see him on here, KO4 UMQ's on here, KO4 VCZ, I think had to work tonight. Those folks. My first QSOs were Wayne and Johnny. Wayne was, I was in Harlan in my office. Wayne was sitting at his house, AF4YJ, his house at Baxter, and Johnny, KY4JLB. He was sitting in Viper there in Perry County, and we were able to have a conversation for quite a long time one afternoon. And so it was really cool. Then my first satellite QSO, that's pretty neat. Joe just happened to record it and was able to look my information up that is posted through FCC and also QRZ. And so he was able to look that up, and he records a lot of his stuff and is able to send that out. So that's pretty cool. Any questions? That's a lot of information that I just threw out there. Any questions, any comments? I hope I didn't lose y'all along the way.
Great job, Jeremy. That was really good.
Thanks, Phil. Billy, if you've got some folks over there, definitely send them to your Johnson County group. Send them over there. Phil, I can't remember the gentleman that we had before, what he said about there in Wise County. I know he talked about some testing locations, but I'm thinking they were in Abingdon, seems like.
I think so. Occasionally, the fire department over here in Wise will do a testing, but that's, you know, maybe once a year or so, something like that.
Right. Reach out to those folks, definitely. And so they're definitely a big help. My Elmer, I see him there, and he's unmuted. I don't know if he's getting ready to give us a good word or what, but thank you for joining in here. Thank you for everybody for joining in. So, you know, one of the things I'll say, you know, we're recording this, so the folks that's going to hear this later via YouTube or through the government channel there, reach out to your extension office. You know, we provide a lot of information, and if you've got some questions, we'll find you someone that we can get you up with, whether it be hopefully an Elmer or one of these amateur radio clubs. We'll reach out to them. And one of the things is, if you're thinking of amateur radio, the problem is I had pondered this for 7 or 8 years, and I didn't do anything with it. It took me 7 or 8 years to decide on this. So definitely reach out to us. We'll be glad to help you. Any questions, comments? Nothing else? Guys, what we got for next week?
I think Tuesday will be the beef nutrition. Is that correct, Billy?
Yeah, that's right. Dr. Katie Mason at the University of Tennessee. She's going to be doing, I'm not sure how I'm going to navigate it, but she's going to be zooming into both the Mountain Zoom session, and then she'll be speaking to our master beef producers on Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to that. She was excited to do that. you know, it gives her a different group of a different audience to talk to. So I think she'll put on a good presentation.
Great.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And I don't remember what we had for Thursday, and I don't have that.
Thursday is the home weather stations.
Yeah, I think Rob covering home weather station.
And Rob, when we talked to Rob about that, Rob seemed well versed in home weather stations, and so that should be a good one. That should be a really good one if you're looking at home weather stations. Get up with Rob. So, well, good deal, guys. It's good to see everybody on this evening. And like I said, if y'all have any questions at any time, give us a yell at one of the extension offices, and we'll put you in touch with somebody. It's good to see everybody. Have a great weekend, and y'all have a good evening.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.